Radio for Justice brings you up to the minute news and conversation around the criminal legal system in Colorado and beyond. Welcome to Up to the Minute.
I'm Trevor Jones from Colorado Radio for Justice. This is Up to the Minute. Earlier this month, Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition hosted an event called How Did We Get Here? Understanding Mass Incarceration in Colorado. They called it an interactive education session. Community leaders and organizations gathered to unpack the policies, decisions, and systems that have shaped incarceration in Colorado. I was there representing Colorado Radio for Justice, and I got to speak with leaders from the CCJRC, as well as Nathan Eagan with the Alternate Defense Counsel, Kym Ray, the Denver campaign coordinator for CCJRC, and Aubrey Valencia of the Storytellers Project and Breaking Chains, Building Bonds. Now let's go there together. It's the Understanding Mass Incarceration gathering at Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition in November 2025.
This is Trevor Jones with Colorado Radio for Justice, and I'm here with Christie Donner from the CCJRC, who has just finished presenting an informative lecture and presentation on the budget process in Colorado regarding the legislature, and especially in regard to the Department of Corrections and how they request and allocate funds and use those funds that they receive from the state. And Christie, would you like to give a very brief summary of the main points that you discussed tonight?
Sure. So part of what we wanted to do is help people understand like the growth of mass incarceration in Colorado, kind of like how we got here, right? And as we're now entering this crisis where we are running out of beds in the Department of Corrections, their budget increase is substantial, at a time when the state is in a crisis around their budget and is cutting all over the place. DOC and on October 31st put in a request for $1.25 billion, which is a $50 million increase from last year. So the issues on the table right now are we going to expand prisons or are we going to do something different? And we're going to have that conversation in two different places. It's not going to be just at the legislature, but we also have to confront and oppose multiple ballot measures that are going to be voted on by people in November that would be increasing sentences and blow up the prison population. We're at this critical crossroads. So part of what we want to be doing is just letting people know, because people in their everyday life don't know that this is going on. And so we just wanted to put some information together and share it and hopefully convince people this is a fight worth fighting with us.
Excellent recap, thank you. And who did you have in the audience tonight?
A lot of it is members from the No More Prisons Coalition. We've been building and doing a lot of outreach with community organizations and people with lived experience who are going to care about this. We've got to come together and we've got to be speaking with one voice and we've got to get loud. I think that is one of the big takeaways we hope people leave from tonight, that, there's technically things that people can be doing at the legislature and lobby this, but the bottom line is we've got to get louder to prevent us going through a massive expansion in the prison bed. I mean, we're out of beds, right? And the population is growing. It's not growing fast. We could be doing things to manage that population. The governor and the department are doing everything that they can to prevent that. And we have to counter that.
Given that you had the No More Prison crew here tonight, what is the intent of the education that we received tonight, and what would you hope we would be able to do with the information that you gave us?
As we become more informed, then we can be talking to people in a deeper level. We can help connect dots about how prison funding has impacted higher ed budget or the K-12 budget, or the choices people are going to be making at the legislature and the budget will affect hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And we need people out there as messengers sharing the good word, right? That we have to be engaged and involved, and information is power. And so we wanted to just put that together. It's not easy to get to. It's not easily accessible, right? You have to dig and pull it together.
It's an amazing thing that you do, is drawing the lines between how the function of one part of our government is affecting another part of our government. And Kyle Gettings and I drew a line between clean water for elementary school kids and funding the Department of Correction expansion. And these are the kind of things that people need to know about, where their actual tax dollars are going and what values are being represented by this allocation of their funds.
And where their dollars are not going, because there's only so much money, right? So Colorado has a constitutional requirement for a balanced budget. We can't run a deficit. We can't, like what the feds can do, we can't do that here, right? So there's only a finite amount of money. So there are choices about what gets money and what doesn't. And DOC has had preferred status for as long as I've been doing this work, almost 30 years. And that's to the detriment of K-12 for decades before the constitutional amendment was passed to protect K-12 funding. Then it was, higher ed has been, the investment in higher ed has gone down by the state substantially, which drives up tuition costs. It drives up all the fees because the schools have to stay, the public schools have to generate revenue elsewhere. So it's all going to be on the backs of students and their parents, right? And then all the way down the line till you get to, oh, by the way, we're going to be reducing access to dental care for people on Medicaid. Oh, by the way, did you know we're going to defund some of the clean water stuff? Oh, by the way, did you know we're going to cut here, cut there, cut here, cut there? Because those are choices. Who gets and who doesn't get. And that's where we're at.
It is a frightening picture. And it seems like just in the last several years, there's been a pretty rapid change in at least legislative activity, if not popular opinion, on things related to justice and through public services. And I know there's going to be surveys and efforts to figure out maybe somewhere how some of this change in the popular opinion has happened. But would you care to maybe toss out an idea on how things changed so rapidly from just a few years ago? Making progressive, intelligent reform was a fluid process to now today where it's a brutal fight.
I think it's a complicated question, but I'll tell you what I think are three big dynamics. George Floyd and the uproar around the country around that, and the criticism and the critique of law enforcement and the criminal legal system more broadly, but predominantly on law enforcement. There's been a huge backlash to any of those accountability questions and movements, right? The Black Lives Matter and others, right? So I think there's a straight line to the resurgence of the Get Tough in response, it's direct response, right, to George Floyd. I think the pandemic and the fact that there were a lot of people that were released while crime was going up was a convenient thing to link, even though you really can't link them because there were places in the country where crime was going up and places where it was going down. So if it was a universal dynamic, you would see it everywhere, and you weren't seeing that. But people were trying to make that a really simplistic, whether it was the releases from the pandemic or releases from reform. There's been a lot to say, like, that's what caused increases in crime, because people, it's very convenient because then you don't actually have to ask the hard questions like, why don't people have jobs? Why don't people have housing? Why don't we have any mental health treatment? Why do people live on the streets for decades at a time with their children? Like, why do we live in a world where an economy is not working for an awful lot of people? It's much easier to say it's the criminal's fault, right? We always say people that use drugs didn't invent the drug war, but they get held accountable, right? So anyway, that I think is a huge part of it. And then the third, I think, is just blatant political opportunism, because crime and punishment has always been a racist dog whistle in this country. And it has always served to box predominantly Democrats into a corner because they don't want to be soft on crime. Everyone can remember Willie Horton, or everyone can remember this or that. And they make a lot of political advancement with their agenda, right? And I feel like with the federal backdrop and the resurgence of the Get Tough and the resurgence of authoritarianism and the resurgence of all of this white nationalist rhetoric and agenda, the Get Tough on crime narrative is made for that. And so I think there's a lot of dynamics in the recent years that has helped us get to where we are now.
So the picture can seem bleak, but you have dealt with this. You have fought for decades in this world, in the regards of criminal justice reform and prison-related issues. Having that backdrop of insight and wisdom and experience, do you have hope for making effective change going forward from today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my dad was a physicist, right? And so he would always say that change is inevitable. That's natural. Stasis is abnormal. So it's a dynamic and fluid. So will it happen in my lifetime? How much will happen in my lifetime? I don't know, but it's not about, it's about the long haul, right? And just how we have to have a reinvigoration of our civil rights movements and human rights movements and things like that. Like this is not new, right? Anybody who's ever needed to fight for their rights has had to do it collectively. And that's all we have to do. We have a vision, right? We know what promotes, and I mean we, the big we, right? Not the CCJRC, we, the big we. We have to fight for it. And we have to come together to do it. It's gonna take a lot of people to do it, but we can do it because change is natural.
Christie, I've never really heard a comparison between physics and the change of legislative processes. That was beautifully put. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you for your insight. Thank you for all the work you do. And I hope that we get a chance to talk to you soon and stay up to date on the upcoming session, moves and ins and outs.
Yeah, would love to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a quick snapshot of Christie's presentation from the Understanding Mass Incarceration gathering. Now let's debrief with some of the other attendees.
This is Trevor Jones with Colorado Area for Justice. I am at the CCJRC, where we have wrapped up the evening having an informative conversation around the DOC prison budget and the budgeting process in the state of Colorado going forward. And I'm here with
Nathan Eagan,
who is a attorney with the Alternate Defense Counsel, working post-conviction cases, and he has agreed to interview with me concerning his experiences tonight. So Nathan, what is one of your key takeaways from tonight's presentation?
First, it was incredibly infuriating hearing the continual growth of DOC's budget, and especially at the end, ballot initiatives coming down the pipe that will increase drastically the number of people who are in prison. So frustration, infuriating, and also I feel like I understand the budget process and how it impacts prison growth in Colorado better, and what the levers are for how to potentially affect that and push back on this continual prison growth.
Excellent. And what is your role in the justice system? Why are you here tonight, and what is it that you hope to do with your career?
I'm a post-conviction attorney, so I challenge wrongful convictions and excessive sentences, mostly using 35Cs, for those familiar with the term. So a lot of ineffective assistance of counsel claims. Once folks lose at trial, they lose their appeal, they then get the chance to first bring up the fact that their attorney didn't do a good job at the trial or appellate level, or they were sentenced excessively in a way that's disproportionate to their crime. That's the first chance that they have to raise those claims. So I represent them at that level, along with the defense team of social workers, investigators, paralegals, resource advocates, other experts, to help challenge convictions that shouldn't have happened in the first place, sentences that were much longer than they should have been.
That's incredible. I love your work. I'm very appreciative of your work personally, and I know a lot of our listeners absolutely are as well. Going forward from tonight, what is a key takeaway that you hope to be able to affect or bring some positive change into?
I want to figure out how to help average voters in particularly suburban Colorado, I think, understand the real world harms of supporting measures that increase prison sentences and prison population. I think people are sold a narrative that more prisons, longer sentences equal more safety. And we know it's not true, but I want to figure out how to explain that in a way that resonates with people. I think that's one thing. I think that's the second thing is trying to figure out creative ways as an attorney, maybe not in my current role, but how other attorneys can force DOC to follow the law. I think there have been really important reforms and legislation that CCRJC has helped pass that are not having the intended effect because DOC is allowed to essentially ignore the law. And so there needs to be better accountability there. I'm curious how lawyers can bring that about.
I'm here with
Kym Ray, Denver Campaign Coordinator for CCJRC.
And Kym is actually recently coming off of an awesome victory in a well-fought campaign over
Get Real Denver. So asking the city to invest in community solutions over additional policing. We got $3.1 million for a community-led grant for youth violence interruption.
Wonderful. That is an amazing project, and I'm very happy for you for making that. As regards this evening, what is a main takeaway that you feel you may have gained here in the presentation?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is like the historical pieces to our Department of Corrections and the long-term fights that have been taking place.
Having that understanding and being a part of the CCJRC, what is the hope that you have for the audience for this evening?
CCJRC has been doing this for over 25 years. And so I hope that folks will, one, understand the historical context, but also recognize, like, we're not stopping. We're in this.
It came up tonight that previous efforts by the CCJRC have been maybe a little bit quieter, a little bit smoother, and that now there might be a impetus and a reason to be a little bit more vocal and work a little bit more intentional or even louder. Would you maybe speak to that need at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. Christie is often like, did a don't let them see you come in sort of thing, or kind of operate in stealth. But the space that we're in right now, I think, especially when we have so much money and dark money being poured in, that we now have to be loud. We have to be overt, and we need to rally community so that way we can have a collective voice to let our government know that the things that they are doing are completely unacceptable.
Well said, Kym. Thank you so much. I appreciate your insight this evening. And once again, congratulations on the recent victory. Thank you for spending some moments with me.
Thank you.
I'm Trevor Jones with Colorado for Justice, and I'm here with
Aubrey Valencia of the Storytellers Project and Breaking Chains Building Bonds.
What is it that your organization does?
So our Breaking Chains Building Bonds program is a family reunification program for formerly incarcerated parents and their children, or children who have been justice involved with their parents. And we've been running now for 8 years and have graduated. We just graduated our 18th cohort of families.
That's incredible. Well, thank you for that work. I know it's very important. I know it's very hard work that you do, and very needed. How did you find out about tonight's event?
I have worked with the CCJRC before. I was part of a crime survivors group that passed some legislation back in, I want to say like 2018, 2019, around then. And we're also a Transforming Safety grantee. Our very first cohort of Breaking Chains Building Bonds was funded by Transforming Safety, and we've been funded by them ever since.
Well, that's such a cool story. So from tonight's presentation, what is one of the main takeaways that you learned or some insight that you gained?
I stay pretty up to date with just the politics around incarceration and what's happening both nationally and at the state level, but seeing specific numbers in terms of the DOC budget, prison growth, that kind of thing. It's definitely concerning, right? I know that the families that I serve, the vast majority of our folks are folks who have struggled with addiction due to childhood trauma that was unresolved and that they did not have the resources to be able to heal from. And can you imagine if they put these millions of dollars towards mental health, substance abuse, recovery, housing, jobs, any of the things that would keep people out of prison in the first place? It'd be amazing.
It would be amazing. I believe that there's plenty of evidence, statistical and social evidence, that would show that redirecting the funds in that regard would probably be way more safe and functional for our society. However, that is not the way things are functioning. Coming out of tonight's event, what is something that you plan to do in response to the presentation?
One of the things we do is storytelling. We're the Storytellers project, and I have given testimony and been a part of some legislation, and I know that the power of storytelling is really what changes hearts and minds. It's not data. And so I'm going to get my peer leaders, our Breaking Chains, Building Bonds peer leaders, trained up to be able to tell their story in really powerful, compelling ways so that we are ready to go to the legislature and share those stories and give that testimony and change those hearts and minds.
Incredible. I love that plan. Is there anything else you would like to add in response to this evening's event?
No, I'm just glad that there are people who haven't given up on this work, because it's hard work, and there's lots of defeats along the way. But incarcerated folks they deserve to be treated like human beings. They deserve second chances. They deserve to live good, happy, healthy lives with their families, and that's what we try to do, both in our direct services as well as in our politics.
Aubrey, thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I hope the rest of your evening goes just as good as it seems to have gone so far.
Once again, I'm Trevor Jones from Colorado Radio for Justice, with moments and conversations from the recent event, How Did We Get Here? Understanding Mass Incarceration in Colorado, hosted by the Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. Thanks for joining us for Up to the Minute here on Colorado Radio for Justice.
Up to the Minute is a production of Colorado Radio for Justice. Tune into our 24/7 broadcast on www.radioforjustice.org. Listen on the app from the App Store and Google Play. Catch this show and other original works shifting the narrative on the criminal legal system on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Colorado Radio for Justice.